Greetings, Shalom. I had some thoughts come to mind, share them on there being something about going back to the beginning after sin and the curse, the beginning of the new creation, and belief in Messiah is going back to the beginning of the creation, but first the natural, then the spiritual. But before the sin and curse, because of it, there was no death yet or dying yet, which means there's no way to learn and grow without dying. The only way to learn is through dying. Naturally, someone is born, and now they can learn because they're dying, and yet they live. But this is what it's like to be born again from above. They start dying now for the first time spiritually to the old man, which means now you can live or just be dying with no life in unbelief or in the harlotry as a false believer. You're just dying or dying and live, because either way everyone has to die to that old man. And even naturally, everyone's dying. And this has been so. Nobody's been able to stop it. They can't change the earthly. How much more they can't touch the heavenly, the spiritual, things that come from above, the Father of lights. His people are lights. They're the stars that shine in a dark world. And not just speaking about stars alone, which would be carnal understanding and truth, so-called replacing the truth by saying this is the meaning, literal stars only. Even though there's a truth that is true, that they are lights in the heavens, in heaven above, in the sky. That is true, and they are the Father's creation and lights, but they point to something way greater and important, real, heavenly things, spiritual things, which is who his people have to become, lights in this world. The Father, Messiah, and his people all one in the firmament, within one body, in the firmament. The moon, sun, and stars, sun, moon, stars are being put in there like we read. And this is teaching a truth, spiritual truth, that his people are one, just as Messiah and the Father is one. And out the golden calf trinity, dog, God, is a wicked beast, false, a false God created, Elohim created in their own mind and heart, which the Father is not a trinity, some pagan beast, but he's one. There's only one creator. None are like him. We read, none are like him. There's none that are like you, we read. None are like him. That includes everyone. None, zero, are like him. That would include the second Godhead and third Godhead of the Trinity, which is an oxymoron, which is speaking as a fool now, because it's not true. In the Trinity, at least two are like him. And you always have that problem forever of three being plural and one creator being singular. But I see it, though, that there is, you right now can't go back to the beginning without sin and curse, but back to the beginning after sin and curse in Messiah, meaning whatever was so, it is so now spiritually. But in the beginning, it was so that we can read everything was given and everything that moves for food. So we went back to the beginning concerning this literal thing. But before the sin and curse, it wasn't like that, though. There was no death and sacrifice of animal as the first one for a covering for Adam and Eve, the Father showing, using something out of sin and darkness that's not good and using it for something good with a purpose, which is animals sacrifice, the covering, which is his righteousness applied on man, which works out righteousness. And it's not just a vain covering, which does cover sin. He does forgive sin. But we also read, this is for believers, not unbelievers, that those who don't forgive and have mercy, the Father won't forgive them either. Those who don't forgive, the Father won't forgive. And this is a problem in religion without understanding the truth, because they're seeing salvation as something that's like you're covered for a doctrine and now you're done. It has nothing to do with reality for what it means that we're supposed to be learning, because it doesn't even work like that. Someone has to be believing continually, working out salvation, which he does in us. And these are the things we have to do in its proper time when the knowledge comes. But seeking the Creator with, true heart, wanting whatever is true and not our own things, is the opposite of rebellion. Rebellion is wanting our own things and determining what's right and wrong and what's true and not true of ourself, which can't be done of self. It has to be given from him above. Even John the Baptist saying, no one can have anything unless it's given. Similar words like this we read. So then before Adam starts dying, he's not learning anything. The only way to learn is to be born again and start dying to the old man. Once Adam started dying, he can now carnally learn things through dying and still being alive, literally, while dying, literally. But this is why Messiah's words, they're going to contradict with the letters, because he says we have to see what it means and what he's speaking of. And then when he says something else, he's speaking of something else, if that's the case, to rightly divide it from what was just spoken of right before that. Anyone who believes in him will never die. Even though, then we also read, even though they die, even though you die, you live. And then whoever believes in him will never die. Goodbye. Have a nice day. I just see this in my mind. Like, this is abomination to an unbeliever or religion, because it's as contradicting as you can get, literally, with the letters. And that's what it is in someone's mind until understanding's given. It's a literal contradiction that cannot be understood until it's given. At least start to be given a little bit of understanding in the beginning. And yet there is no contradiction, because Messiah speaks truth and doesn't lie. Speaking of what he sees and knows, spiritual things, like he said, my word is spirit. Flesh profits nothing. So no one's better for it and no one's worse for something that's flesh all by itself. And yet everything needs discernment. Everything needs rightly divided in his word. So speaking of never dying, as long as someone truly believes and abides in the vine, which is being saved, and if we don't, we start dying. The no good death versus the dying the good death. There's two different dyings. One is just dying and being destroyed within because not abiding in the vine, so it's shriveling up and dying. But belief in Messiah is dying to the old man and living because we forfeit our life, soul, to do his will. And those that believe in him will never die as long as they believe. Those are true words. It does require belief. We read, whoever believes in him will never die. And now he's not speaking of dying literally, but dying, which is the death mankind's in, to be dead apart from him. And speaking of eternal life, age-abiding life, as long as we abide or eat the tree, you keep living as long as we keep doing that. Adam would literally live if that was so, but that couldn't be so, because a bunch of sin in the heart has to be destroyed and learn to do what's good and choose good instead of evil, and not see the difference between good and evil, which is what the worldly wisdom is, which is what the knowledge of tree of good and evil is not seeing the difference between good for real and evil. And it's mixed, and it's one mixed thing, which is always a sin. If it's 5% mixed and so-called 95% pure, that's sin. If it's 0.05% mixed and it's only a 99.99 whatever light, this is mixed. It just becomes a trickier trick when it's like that. If it's 90% bad and 10, that's mixed. That's all sin. This world symbol of good and evil, the Chinese or whatever it came from, a little bit of black and white and a little bit of white and black is the definition of all evil and sin. All of it is reduced to those simple words, just like all the law is reduced to love, and all of evil, the devil's works, is reduced to murder, hatred, steal, kill, destroy. But it's huge, though. Even though it can be simplified in a word, it's huge. It's everything. It's literally everything. Either all evil or all good. Good, one word; evil, one word. But it's huge. You can't just say good, love my neighbor as myself, and just blindly say that only to make self look good for the moment, and having nothing to do with living it and knowing what it's meaning. Because there's not many people that are living by those words, which is summing up the whole law. Do to others as you would have others do back to you, is not being done by that many in this world. If someone focused on that just for 1 week, they would find out how often they sin and don't do to others that they would want done back to themselves. They would find out if they could see it. But blinding is so strong, it doesn't even want to take up that challenge. No, not going to even take it up. It just forgets, and it's the next day and it's gone out of someone's mind. Just bounces right off of them. The seed is given and the bird takes the seed away. The word taken away. Something about being taken away is real because the seed disappears. So whatever the parable's meaning, the reality is something is disappearing in reality. That's his word disappearing from within someone, and it's gone. This is a spiritual reality. In someone's mind and heart, it's real when that happens. And the bird, representing foul spirit. The seed is his word. The earth is the Father's field, of which things grow, good and bad, good fish, bad fish, or all the other examples of good and bad. The kingdom of heaven is catching a bunch of fish and separating them and throwing out the bad ones. There it is. That's the kingdom of heaven. And if someone doesn't learn what this is meaning for real, it's just some worthless words that mean nothing and have no power and no effect in someone, which is what false prophets do. They make his word to no effect. We have to learn what effect means to understand that to some degree. It's no effect in someone. That's how they destroy his truth. There's a reality of suppressing it, guarding it, and not letting people enter because their doctrine and their lies turn them around while they get them to believe that they're for you. It's pretty stunning how deep the deception is, how crooked mankind is. And then he never acknowledges he does this work of the devil. That's the problem also, which causes more confusion because it's never admitted. Anything that's done for evil in the heart, it's hidden with intent to hide, not that it's hidden from the Creator or from those that are being given to see, but someone thinks they can hide it. That's the problem with earthly things. through mankind and his understanding. That's the problem, not the Creator's commandments. 2 or 3 witnesses through natural Jerusalem it's going to have a problem. It's meant to be having a problem. It's supposed to. That's the purpose and point, to bring it out. If someone doesn't see you commit literal adultery, now you didn't sin in someone's mind because 2 literal witnesses didn't see anything. That's a problem. But man thinks it's good. It's enmity. It's supposed to be like this. The Father exposes religion first. Nobody else, until it's given, he does that. He exposes the harlot, which is natural Jerusalem, and what the carnal mind is, not his commandments, and what they really mean. And man's ways is religion with a bunch of do's and don'ts. That's what we have to die to, where it's done out of corruption, and it has nothing, it won't do any good for the indulgence of the flesh, how the apostle says it. It has a false humility and a false religious kind of look-alike the true thing, but it doesn't do anything good concerning actual sin. It can't stop it or make someone overcome sin for real through some natural, created, carnal thing that someone is saying will do that, and it doesn't do that. Looking up at the sky doesn't fix anybody's heart by itself. It cannot do that. Only the Creator can change someone through belief in him and repenting for the evil, whatever evil it is, any given day, any missing of the mark, missing the bullseye, and hitting someone in the forehead and then laughing about it is who mankind is. But then pretend you care, pretend it's not funny. Let me put on an act. That is all sin. To act is sin. It is all sin and rebellion to act like something, but it's not real. This is no good. And man doesn't have it in himself to do anything good or real, so he has to act all the time. This is the image of the beast. It only looks like the truth for an image. And it's incredibly crafty and tricky. If we don't have discernment, that's how crafty it is. Very. But now Messiah and the Father in heaven, which is representing things also, heavenly things, spiritual things of the heart. Every sin that's done in the heart, let alone literal, some kind of literal sin physically, is seen and judged, and it cannot be hidden. Whatever someone's doing in the secret, it's going to be screamed out at the rooftops. That's why Messiah taught this. This is true right now. It's been true since he said those words, since it began, the beginning of the creation, reality in Messiah, real sin being spoken of, and not what man thinks is sin. So the Father winked at sin in times past because he never dealt with real sin. Only what looks like sin, which is writing the law on the stone, outward, hard, cold. It doesn't get inside. If you try to get inside, it breaks the stone. It breaks someone when they hear truth and hear his word. Pricks them in the heart, either for good or for evil. And Stephen, however it's pronounced, says, you uncircumcised in heart, you always resist the set apart spirit. And he kept on going until they stoned him. And he saw the heavens opened up and the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Father with power. That's what he saw while they're stoning him. And then don't charge it against them is the heart. As Messiah said, forgive them, they know not what they do, while they're killing him, which is an impossible work, can't be done without the Father's power and spirit. Nothing can be done. As Messiah said, you can do nothing. Without me, you can do nothing. If to abide in Messiah who abides in the Father. Without Messiah, no one sees the Father. And if they don't have the Father, they don't see the true Messiah either. Has to go through that way. And saying, I believe in Jesus, is not the understanding of believing. It never means that at any time. Just words alone. Never means that about anything that's real in his word, any teaching or truth. Never means just the words. It's always whatever it means spiritually, of which we have to learn, but it's never just the words. Never. What good is that? It proves nothing. It's no good by itself. It's disgusting to the Creator because it says some cheap words and has nothing to do with it in the heart, which is the only real thing. It's not hard to masquerade. A serial killer can say all the right words, and he deceived all of religion that he's a serial killer at the present time because he looked good. He did a good job masquerading. Messiah, speaking of the wolf in sheep's clothing, but inside they're ravenous wolves. They want to destroy you inside, and they think nobody can see that that's what they are. Oh, we see it. It's being given to see, and the Father always sees it. They bless you with their lips, and they curse you from within. Where do we read that in Psalm? Bless you with the lips, but inside it's full of curses. Messiah taught out of the Father's word. It's not as if that wasn't already in his word. But he's teaching the truth and what it really means in spirit, with power to actually do this, to keep his word, and not just saying words and thinking we know what it means, which is who man is apart from him, which is what religion is. It doesn't know even the very words it speaks of, and it doesn't believe the very words it speaks itself, even if it's a lie. Still doesn't understand if that lie is true or not from the heart. But it will defend it bitterly to the end because of other spiritual reasons that need to be seen and learned. Why someone would defend it, there's reasons for. And that's so that they're not caught and spotted for not being a true believer, but a wolf in sheep's clothing. So then it takes that anger and that rage and that zeal for an image and tries to sell it that they're doing that because they love truth, when they're actually angry, and that thing that looks like zeal is coming from someone because they're being exposed, and that's why they're getting angry and look like they have zeal, because it's desperately defending the lie and doesn't want to believe it's in a lie and in a delusion. That's how tricky it is. I could go out into my backyard and pretend I'm somewhere else and use the phone and show the ground, and then plant something there and say, I found this amazing thing at this park. Wow, this is amazing. And nobody would know that I'm making it all up if I posted a video, would they? How would we know without discernment? We wouldn't. But in spirit, nothing can be hid. If the Father reveals it, they cannot hide it from even a believer when it's given to see. That discernment has to be given, though, asked for. And you start out the video with a little bit of music and say, look, I'm at this location here. I found this amazing relic here. You show it on your phone and this is amazing. And then at the end go, I was just making it up. I'm at my backyard and I planted this thing and it's no relic. It's pretty powerful deception, but that's a natural picture of what's happening in the heart for many. These false prophets work like that constantly with spiritual things, with the heart, let alone earthly things, something you can touch and see, a natural delusion and deception. Well, there's the spiritual delusion and deception, the deception Messiah warns about. Don't be deceived, because many false prophets have gone out to deceive many. They will deceive many. We read that. They do. They always have, though. They've been the false prophets during Jerusalem's time, hating, trashing, stoning, killing, wanting dead the true prophets. It's always been true. Cain killed Abel. It's always been true. The false hate the true, and they can't believe in the favor and mercy and grace, which is a gift, and that it's not from us. There's no pride in it, yet they have to believe it's pride, though. They have to. Those that are in darkness have to believe it's prideful to see and know whatever he's given us. Does it mean we're perfect? What is that? Perfect right from the beginning? That's a separate thing. It's not having anything to do with that. That's a heavy yoke and burden someone just did on someone that Messiah speaks about, that people do. When someone's doing that, they just demanded perfection from you. That means they put a heavy yoke and burden on you with their heart. They did the real sin that they can read of. And you can't take that back. You can try to fix it by saying the right words and say, I didn't mean it, or this or that. You can't change the heart. The person was revealed for what they really believe and are. And only the Creator can change our heart, and he doesn't even do that in one day, let alone man being able to change his own heart. He can't do that. That work was done. Here's the work. It's left behind. It's over. And if it was rotten fruit, that came from a rotten thing. You can't change that rotten fruit by saying, I'm just joking. It's still rotten. It's there. It's already over. Now it's just desperately trying to cover itself, backtrack. Magician, sleight of hand. That's man's works constantly. It's tiring to see constantly. Have to see, though. Have to see, otherwise what, pray to be blind? Let's go back to being blind. No, so then it's just necessary, then have to see it. It has to bring forth some pain, knowledge from above, not the serpent knowledge, which is worldly wisdom from this world, from the natural mind, and its wisdom is not the true wisdom. It only looks like, it can only look like it. Sometimes it doesn't look like it, but the best it can do is look something like the true. That's it. A wolf is a wolf because it's a wolf by nature. Now you put sheepskin on it to trick people, but it's still a wolf. It cannot change who and what it is. It will do wolf works because it's a wolf. When it's pretending, it's not real, because that's not what a wolf can do. And a sheep won't roll in mud because it's not a pig. It's not going to go and do that on purpose all the time like a pig would, because it's a sheep. And it's the nature of the sheep, and the pig is a pig, each one different in this way. So man is no different. Can he change his spots? Can a leopard change its spots? No. Rhetorical question. Can that which is evil do good after we read a couple examples of no change possible? No. No, man can do no good of himself because a leopard can't change its spots. It's the same understanding. It cannot change who and what it is of itself, but the Father can change us. But we can't change it ourselves. If you try to mold your heart, you're going to die. Which is what it requires, death. He molds the heart, which is his working and power in us that we can't do by our own hand. Can't circumcise the heart by our own hand. Can't be born of our own self, just like a baby can't be born. What is it they don't understand? And then they put a heavy yoke and burden and debt onto the world and say, the gift has come to all, but you have to do something and choose it freely and take it for yourself. Even though they say it's given, the gift was given, which means someone truly would receive if it was given for real. But you have to choose it now, what was given, then it will be accepted in yours. Here's what this looks like in reality with a picture. I give a cheeseburger to someone and say this is a gift because they're hungry, like the Father has to feed us his spiritual food, but now a natural picture. And when you give it to someone, that means they received it. Otherwise, you could never say, I gave it. Giving it is to receive at the same time, just like buying is for selling. Whatever someone's buying, selling is happening at the same time. How could it be any other way? And if someone is selling, someone's buying. If it was sold, someone bought it. And if it was bought, it was sold for real. Assuming that the buying is real and the selling is real, which is what I'm speaking of, because the Father's word is never fake, it's real. It's always speaking of whatever the truth, real thing is, not fake. And so if you give someone to something, they received it for real if it was given, just like buying is selling. You buy what someone else sold and you sell what someone bought. At the same time, when you give, someone received at the same time. Now they have to acknowledge the cheeseburger and say, I accept it before I can receive it. And it's counted for receiving it now because they had to do something. That's how they understand faith is being a gift. That has nothing to do with giving. Now giving is no longer giving and mercy is no longer mercy if it's something to do on their part, to acknowledge it, receive it, choose it. I choose the Creator to choose to give to me so that I can choose it. This is delusion. That's complicated, isn't it? It's a mess. I chose the Creator to choose to give me so that I can choose his gift. This is evil. There's no reality to this. What's the simple truth? It's a gift. He gives and someone receives. Done. That's what truth is. It's simple, and it doesn't have to cover anything because it's not a lie in the first place. You give a cheeseburger to someone, it's theirs. It's done. It's over. It doesn't have to pretend or cover and hide in darkness because it wasn't a sin from the beginning. The only way mercy can be mercy is if it's actual mercy according to what the Father says mercy is. If it's fake mercy, it's not mercy. If it's fake grace, fake a gift of faith, it's not real. That is sin. It's sin to the Creator. That is what sin is. Fake. The free gift is given. That means someone received it when the Father gives it. They didn't do anything. Like we read, now all of a sudden, when some understanding is given, I see that the church world doesn't believe in grace, but they say the words all day long. Who would ever think it's so bad that they say words they don't believe themselves all day long? They don't believe what gift is at all, and what grace is at all, and what mercy is at all. They had some kind of part in it secretly. That's what they really believe, but they won't tell you that if there's no pressure or light exposing them. That's a backup only. It's only going to be revealed with a little bit of testing and light shining and exposing its false things and image. Then it will give itself away every time. If someone can see, it gives itself away, someone, for what it really believes in the heart, which is not a gift of faith, not mercy at all. You have to do something to receive and choose it, and secretly believing it's better than someone else in pride because it chose the better thing than the others that didn't choose it. Now they deserve to go to hell because they didn't choose the gift. It's all pride, all of it. And of course, their doctrine and what it is of demons. You know, what they say hell is, the judgment, is a doctrine of demons. And it's filled up with steaming pride. It truly is that, exactly that. Because they're putting bondage, heavy yokes, requirements onto people secretly. And if you don't do what they think you should do that they did, now it's judging you and condemning you with its heart, whether openly or secretly. This is all evil. We're not reading for nothing that Did you receive the Spirit by works of the law and some kind of working, or is it by faith? And then after someone believes, my goodness, here's all his word now for those that believe to learn and do for real. But concerning receiving the gift of faith and his Spirit, no works are done for any believer that ever existed and ever lived. They didn't do anything for it. It's the truth. They received the gift. Now share this thing freely, this gift and good news. If you charge for it, they obviously didn't receive anything from the Father if they're charging for it. Because no believer could do that if they know who the Father is and received his gift and are understanding what this is, that it's a monstrous sin and abomination to charge for his word and then put heavy yokes and burden on people that don't choose what they choose and say in their denomination. This is all evil. Pride is sin, so it's so big, but it just comes down to a few words in pride. Pride is huge. It's all sin. There's real pride going on constantly in people's heart that believe in these things continually, these lies. Doing things out of crooked intention for self-gain. They make sure they're going to gain, and then they'll do something with the hopes and belief that they'll get some kind of gain. Obviously, they don't know who the Creator is and haven't received any free gift from him freely, because they're not giving freely. They wouldn't be able to do what they're doing if they received freely. Freely you receive, freely give. Oh, by the way, I'm going to send you out with nothing. Don't even carry a spare coat or something. And when you come back, I'm going to ask you if you're lacking anything. And they all say no. There's no excuse. What is this very specific teaching? It's not about doing what we read with the letters, literally. It's whatever it means, which has to be given. He sends them out with nothing. This is a separate teaching from sending them out with a little bit of something. We read both. Don't take your money bags. Don't take extra sandals. Don't take extra anything. Go out, come back, and then did you lack anything? No, because the Father provides. This time, take some things. Why are we reading that now, which contradicts with the letters? Don't take anything. Maybe so they can give. Maybe there's other reasons. Yes, there's other reasons. This is something separate. This doesn't mean you do this literal thing all the time. And if you break that literal thing, now you're in sin. These are two separate things and both have to be done. Now take the money bags, take some things. If you did the one thing literally all the time, how do you give ever? At any time? How do you ever give? Like literally speaking. See, it breaks something else by not having the right understanding for one thing. It breaks everything else around it. But if you have some things with you, now you can give. This is separate. You go out expecting nothing from anyone and making no excuses, and the Father will provide. Now when you go out with something, you do that first thing, and now you can give too. You do both spiritually at the same time, not one or the other. But they do contradict with the letters without the understanding. It does absolutely contradict with the letters. There's no other way except to contradict with the letters when speaking of different truths. You have to contradict somewhere with the letters if we're speaking actual truth. It's just a matter of seeing where and finding it. And there is no problem when you contradict with letters by itself, because that's not the meaning by itself. That's not the heavenly meaning. The real things are heavenly things, spiritual things, the true things from above. That's what never contradicts, not the letters alone and natural things alone. Sometimes it can contradict naturally or sometimes not. Both exist. So then the flesh profits nothing. It can't be based off of flesh. Natural understanding from man is flesh. Carnal things, carnal understanding from self, worldly knowledge and wisdom is carnal and foolish. And it doesn't have any real understanding from above, spiritual things, real things. Pride is not a physical object. It's a spiritual thing, and it's very real, deadly real. Pride is a condition that it's what someone's doing. It's a work. It's a working pride in the heart for real, and it looks like something in spirit. And if we can't see pride. We only see what we think pride is, which is whatever someone says pride is for an image. Whatever looks prideful to them is their definition of pride. This is carnal. That's the worldly wisdom. That's not real. It could be someone said the right thing and it's a sin, or it could be wrong. Either way, it's still not the real pride. Someone could say that was prideful because it looked prideful to them, and it literally was in heaven prideful. Or they could say it was prideful because it looked prideful to them, and it wasn't pride. The point is, the flesh doesn't determine which one was it, which one it is. It doesn't profit anything by itself. It profits nothing. It could be pride. It might not be pride. The real pride to be seen is always pride. It is the real pride. You can look prideful all day long to bring it out now and not do any actual pride. The whole world could say you're prideful and you didn't do any pride. That's the truth. It's what they did to Messiah. He wasn't prideful. They thought he was, even claiming to be God, the creator, for saying he's a son. How is it that they're that blind? Because Messiah is from the Father, and he's exposing them because he's a light in the world. He's exposing their evil deeds and their wicked heart. So they have to attack Messiah and his people. Always has been true. Darkness doesn't expose real sin. Only light can expose real sin. The Father is our light, and Messiah is a light in the world, and he's exposing them for just being around them, let alone teaching them, giving truth. And they think he's prideful because he says he's the son of Elohim, speaking truth. Why does Messiah say that? Because it's true. They see no way for truth available without seeing pride. They don't see a good way available for this or that or this or that. Only the evil and darkness. They don't see a good way for saying, I'm son of Elohim. I'm the son of Elohim when they ask him. Well, then he answers truthfully, and they don't like their answer, his answer. So then they want to kill him. They're the ones that asked, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Apparently only one answer was allowed with their heart and mind. And if it wasn't their answer, let's kill him. If it was their answer, then they would pretend to love him because it's sin. It went with what they already predetermined. No, I'm not the son. Oh, okay, good. Come join us. Messiah is coming someday. Come join us, Messiah. Messiah is coming someday. That's what they would have done if Messiah said no and lied. That was truth to them. If he would lie, it was truth to them. It's that backwards. That's how backwards the heart is. They would accept him. They would make an image. It would look like they accept him because he's a sinner just like they are. And then they only accept sin. Then they can pretend to love you. But they don't, because they just accepted sin, which is hate, which is murder. It only looks like they care about you. It's not real. It's not real in the heart. This is the truth. It's not real. They do not care about anybody. If it's a false prophet and an unbeliever, they don't care. They can only look like you care if you obey them and agree with them about everything. because it doesn't want to be exposed and doesn't want to see any of its lies and sin or anything. So then someone gets angry when they're exposed because they don't want to be brought to the light. It's for its deeds are evil. That's what it would show. Messiah's words, for its deeds, its works are evil. But the children of the day come out to the light so that it's manifested what they are without partiality. It needs to see itself. Just like seeing sin elsewhere or judging between this or that with people. It can't be partial, it has to see itself and its own sin and repent with light showing your own sin, our own mistakes. And it's been like this since the beginning. But first only shown naturally through mankind, then the spiritual in Messiah, because all things were fulfilled in a sense through an understanding. Every prophecy that could be prophecy is already fulfilled. Every natural thing in prophecy already happened. And in this way, all things have been fulfilled already. And yet, it's still being fulfilled and needs to be fulfilled. All of this is true at the same time, even though it contradicts literally. Here's the truth. All things have been fulfilled. Like some will say and get tricked and think the resurrection already happened. They teach blasphemous lies and destroy people. Monsters, because they don't seek the truth. We can say, though, all things have been fulfilled because it's coming out of understanding, while saying it's being fulfilled every day and it still will be fulfilled at the end. All of it's true at the same time. Because fulfilled naturally is rightly divided from spiritually. It's not the same thing exactly. That's how it can contradict with the letters, because it's not the same thing spiritually. That's how Messiah can say, if you believe in me, you will never die. But even though you die, you will live. This is okay. In fact, it has to do that to teach and understand whatever truth is that he's speaking about life and light and life. If this truth is being spoken and then another truth right next to it, a little different, is being spoken, it has to contradict so often with letters or sound like it contradicts. But it's not in heaven. It just has to be that way on earth with so many things, because different spiritual things are being spoken of and they don't contradict. And without rightly dividing, we'll also have a contradiction, because it's two mixed things, and a mixed thing is always a contradiction. It's just a matter of seeing where and how. All mixed things are contradictions. It's just a matter of seeing where and how. It's not even possible to be anything else. If it's mixed for real, it's a contradiction and a lie. Just because someone doesn't see it, because they don't see it, they think it's not so. Well, it's called being blind. If it's mixed, it's a contradiction and a lie. That's the truth. And then you call it corn when it's mixed with mashed potatoes. It's a mixed. It's a contradiction and a lie. It's not corn. And someone else calls it potatoes, liar. And it's not potatoes either. It's mixed. You have to rightly divide the two and then explain something. Then you can say one or the other in truth. Even if it's mixed, then you could still at least speak, because you rightly divided and explained each one that it's mixed. It's not corn or potatoes, but if you rightly divide it, there's corn in the potatoes and potato in the corn. His word is like spiritual food. It has to be rightly divided like literal food in order to see and call one thing for what it really is, pure, no mixing. You can't call it some mutation. You call it the mixed thing. So calling it corn is a lie, because it's not all corn. And calling it potatoes, mashed potatoes, is a lie, because it's not all mashed potatoes, because it's mixed. It's so powerful and simple and pure, the truth. It's unbelievable what mankind's done. What's more unbelievable, though, because there's not much to say about the world. It's the world, but what the harlot has done is astonishing. They say they believe and give truth. That's what's unbelievable to another level. That's why John is pale-faced, because the Father showed him the judgment, of which he must show us also how bad it is. If we never get pale-faced because of it, must have never seen it, must have never seen the truth. If it never happens, he's going, how could this be? This cannot be. It cannot be that bad. He's wondering. And I'm throwing in some words there because that's what the wondering is. It's like saying, I can't believe it. No, it can't be. Wondering in amazement at the evil that it is. How could it be this bad? You know, so it's like a wondering on the evil side. It's not like a good thing. And yet it is good because it's seeing what it needs to see. In spirit, this is seen. John is carried away in spirit. I will show you the harlot's judgment. What do you think? What do you say? Are you impressed? Is it making you afraid? How true my word is and how blind you are? If you're not afraid now, you will be, with the true proper fear of the Creator and not a cowardly carnal fear. The cowardly fear is not wanting to face self and face the Creator. That's the cowardly fear inside someone. The proper fear we read of, to fear him, it's a fear, all right, but it's not worldly cowardly fear. No, it's not that. They're two different fears altogether. What do they have in common? Fearful. Both have fear, and that's going to be similar to each other because both really are fearful. It's a different fearful, though. One is good and one is bad. But they both have fear in common, which is a real reality. It's not just a word. Saying some certain words does not mean you have fear. Okay, now I say and preach the gospel of hell with a megaphone on the street. I have fear for my Creator because I fear his judgment, his hellfire judgment to come. No, it's not. That person has no understanding, if that's what it just did, of what the true fear is. It's actual condition and reality that happens inside someone. It's real, literal fear. It's not a joke. It's not saying words. I'm creating my own definition of fear because I do some carnal thing. Now it means I have fear. I fear the Lord. It's nothing to do with that. This fear is real. You can't create it and muster it up. More has to be given. Who would pray to be more fearful? Only an insane person in Messiah. The rest of the world will call it insane. Why would you pray to have more fear? Well, so that we don't sin, which causes death. And the Father says to the Israelites through Moses, the mediator of the Creator and man, is Moses God, the Creator? We know Moses is not the Creator. They could say that. They would acknowledge that. And he's a type of Messiah. If the type is not the Almighty Creator, how is Messiah? Because he's a type of Messiah. Something about them have to be similar. What's the similar thing? Both teach the people commandments. That's the similar thing. Both are mediators between man and the Creator. That's the similar thing. What's different? Huge difference of what the law is meaning in the heart versus writing it on stone and keeping it only carnally, naturally, outwardly. That's the difference, but both teach to keep the commandments. Messiah is doing it right now, like what Moses, this, we have to get the understanding of why we read what we read. Many are perishing on the way and they don't make it. That's why we read that. It's for us, specifically for the kingdom of heaven. It wasn't even for their own admonition. We read that. Oh, are you supposed to build an ark? Blah, blah, blah. And then try to throw homosexuality in there to try to make it sound stupid like the other things so they can say that it's okay. That's old things, you know. Do you want me to stone someone for not doing this or that? It's a massive trick. They have no clue what they're talking about. You know, the people that do that don't truly know. I better plug my, oh, I've still got battery life. They don't know what it's meaning and how it's working. So they know not what they do, but it is still a blind sin that's being done though. If he teaches us what his commandments are, then we'll know. But rightly dividing his word, you'll look like an insane person because they're going to say, where does it say that? Where does it say that? How do you know how to do this? How do you know how to do that? Not to do this and not to do that. Exactly. You have to seek the Creator yourself and learn what these things mean on the way yourself, or else you never will. You know, but it's not going to be accepted in this world, this truth. That's the only way it can be given. If you try to say this means this and this means this, it'll be rejected by this world because they won't see, first of all, how it's true, because they don't see the spiritual things we're talking about, and they don't see it say that in his word with the letters. So how do you know what to do? How do you know what not to do? His word is pretty big. Confusion is from not knowing and from lies. His truth is simple, and if someone's confused, we just ask for whatever confusion there is specifically for it. And if something else comes up, then we ask again. Because now something new is coming up, it's confusing again or contradicting again because it's something new that we never knew. And as something new comes up again, it's always the same in the beginning. It's not making sense. Something's not right with it. It's not the complete thing. It's missing things, lacking some understanding. But when that understanding comes, it's like, wow, how do you, no contradictions. You see, he answers our questions. So then will he do it again and again? That's where the doubt could come in for a believer, is that he already did things and someone's tempted to say he didn't do anything, that the whole thing was a delusion. But I'm speaking only for true believers, because for false believers, it is a delusion. But we'll be tempted to say that and think maybe all of it's messed up, that he didn't give us anything. That's how bad it is. That's how much we're no good without him. But see, so many things could cause someone to doubt. So many tricks could start working this death, because wherever the faith is not doing something without faith is death. It's real. All someone has to do is get you to doubt a little, and it's already working destruction, because it's sin, and the Father won't stop it, in that he won't stop his judgment. He's not going to do something just because it's a believer. No, he's no partiality in judgment. That's why we literally have to learn what's right and repent, literally, because he's not partial. He'll allow someone to destroy us for a little, just to show us that we have no power of ourself, that we need him, that his word is true and we can't mock him. He has to allow some of this to happen for us to believe it. Otherwise, how could someone believe what they never experienced? And then after they experience some things, then they can believe with some fear now that the Father's not joking about his judgment and partiality, and that you can get darkened and start getting tricked and deceived if you don't watch and pray, because we can't mock him. Well, I'm going to do this or this, but I'm not going to watch and pray. Okay, then the Father will have to judge that, and this person starts going down. Then they learn something out of it and say, this is important. Watch and pray all the time, or else before you know it, he snaps you out of darkness and death and delusion, and you don't even know how it got there. It's so deceptive and crafty. how sin works, not the Father being deceptive, but because blinding is blind. That means as someone's getting blinded, they don't see what they need to. Before you know it, it's like they're dying and it's getting dark. And then he like wakes you up. No one can play games with the Father. If we start getting prideful for real and doing certain things out of pride like that, you can think that you're going to stand with power and clarity and sight. No, which is a wrestling to really start accepting this, that you literally cannot stop his judgments if we don't do what's right. We will go blind about something we can't see, and you don't even know how it happened. That's what's frightening, because it was blinding along the way, and you don't even know where it started or where it ends, and you snap out of it. That's how strong his judgments are, and that's how strong evil is, wanting us to be destroyed. The enemy of truth, people using crafty tactics that is working, trying to work some kind of sin and doubt and unbelief, anything, because anything done without faith is sin for the person. What does this mean? Once again, it's something that has to be seen, not just saying the words. Faith is real. So if something's being done with not the real faith, but there's doubt, there's not knowing, see, it's already working corruption, death, or grieving the Spirit, because it's not done with faith. And there's no way anyone would think that any of it works like this, because our thoughts are not his thoughts until he starts showing us. It could be about a penny. It could be about a Coke bottle that takes someone down. It's not a joke, because they did something, and it's some carnal thing that's really simple, seems small, and they did something without faith, and that thing became a huge deal all of a sudden. It throws out everything, how man works, in the garbage, because something small could be big, something big could be big, something big could be small. It could be anything at any time. It just depends. There's no automatic for anything. Each thing has to be discerned itself, by itself, for itself, not assumed that it's like this over there. It can't work like that. Which will be, that's going to be a wrestling, a frustration to break through, to deny self, to think, I will choose, I'm going to do this and stop this, and I won't do this sin, and I'm going to be quite good because I'm not doing so bad right now. And because the Creator's patient, that sin, that judgment doesn't hit them all at once so often. And it's happening over a day or a few days, weeks, and that's how deceptive it is. Next thing you know, we just ate our own words. Then you say, no, it can't be that this is true. It can't be that this is true. There's no way this is true. Okay, well, I believe it a little bit, but it can't really be that true. That if we do some kind of sin, we're actually getting literally spiritually blinded. It can't be. And then that has to die more and more and more and more and more until we believe it perfectly. It's not perfect in the beginning for anything. Through failures, he shows us the power of his word and judgment. And it's frightening. Because if we're a delusion about something, we don't know. That's what's frightening, because the blinding is real. You don't know what you're blind to. If someone's going down in sin, they're getting blind, which could mean all kinds of different things. But one common thing is to start thinking that the sin is actually not sin. That's one of the things that will happen often, is to start believing in your heart that the actual sin is not sin. And if someone can trick someone into doing that, they're taking them down, because they're going to continually do what's sin in reality, which is death, but they believe it's not sin, which gets them to do it constantly. But in reality, in heaven, it's still sin, and it's producing death and a judgment. So that's how one deception could work, is believing something is not sin when it is in reality. Or this also can work sin. Saying something is sin when it's not sin is the exact same problem. And that can work sin in someone and get tricked and deceived by someone. Saying that if you have a sip of wine and they try to get you to say it's sin, that is sin because it's not sin. Well, we would have to know what sin is, first of all, on any given thing that's being spoken of. But we know that, a little bit of wine or something is not sin by itself. It could be for someone, or it might not be. But by itself, it's not a sin. Now someone says that that thing is sin every time. That's a lie. That's a deceiver. And they won't answer your questions when you give them scriptures that show that a little bit is not sin by itself. Not speaking of getting drunk, And Messiah it's to call Messiah a sinner because he did have some wine. How does someone get that blind? Where they're actually teaching thousands of people not to do this literal thing because it's literally sin in any amount. No alcohol in any amount. This isn't about saying you should or shouldn't do something. It's about what sin is. And then it's claimed that this is sin when it's not. It's going to destroy people. It's going to be connected to other sin, like a bad tree. It's connected with all its bad branches. If one lie is being believed for real in the heart, the other things have to conform to the lie, meaning they all have to be lies and contradict. And every lie has to cover the other lie. And it just keeps producing more lies. Because the fruit of one lie is you have to lie more to cover it. And when you cover that lie, that was a greater sin, because not only did the first thing that was done is real sin, which it is for any given example, but when you cover that sin with another lie, which you have to do in sin, it gets worse. It's even greater, because you're not only accepting that that's true and good, you're covering it with intent to cover it. What does it look like the third time when you cover it? When you cover the covered thing, it just keeps getting worse. There's a real judgment for this. He hands them over to their lusts to complete them, because that's how his judgment works. It will show them as hypocrites that condemn themselves. It makes it utterly foolish. He hands them over, removes all power, whatever little bit of power he may be restraint. Remove a little restraint and off they go. Those in iniquity, fill them up with more iniquity. We read that in Psalm. And how many times do we read something like that? Judge them. Let them be handed over to their sin and become a slave to it for a righteous judgment. Don't let them get away with it and bless real sin and reward real sin. No, don't do that. We get this, understanding from him, but we read that it's not. How does Abraham say, or Lot? Do you judge the righteous as the wicked, the same, and make no distinction? May it not be so. That's far be it from you to do such a thing. And then you keep asking until you get down to 10. But the answer is, if there's one, he won't do it. He does not do the mixed judgment. He's never failed. But it did come down after they were pulled out of the world, out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Then the judgment came. But he doesn't mix the judgment between his people and not his people. He doesn't do that. Makes a distinction. It's not because we're good. It's not because we're doing something good of self. And yet this is true anyways. It's still true. that he makes a distinction. We even read that. I make a distinction so that you know I make a distinction between such and such and such and such. And anybody that curses his people for a judgment, they will be cursed by the Father. Back on them as they measured, it comes back on them. Measure out the court. Measure out this where the Gentiles trample everything. It's interesting. It's like a literal measurement, but you get the picture. But that means something spiritually, to be seen in spirit, what this measurement is. Measure it out. How big is the sin? 3 inches? It's coming back on you 3 inches, not 4, not 1. It's coming back just as you measured it. It's going to be measured back on you perfectly, and you eat your own words and receive death for judgment. More confusion, more sin. Measure out the unbelievers and unrighteous, the judgment of the Gentiles, a spiritual Gentile, meaning anyone who's an unbeliever, regardless of flesh. Before it was only natural for man, but it means something for us today spiritually. Before it was just a Gentile is not from Abraham's literal seed, and now you're a dog. Well, this is faulty. This is corrupt and wicked from man's heart to believe this. What it means, though, is the truth, and that's what it always meant, that the Father knows, but it just wasn't so revealed to man yet. It reveals so much different sin on what mankind is. The wisdom and everything he did is stunning. Stunning. It's a double-edged sword. One side of it's like for evil on man's part, but what the meaning of the scripture is something good, spiritual, to be kept in the heart. It's a double-edged sword. For good or evil. The very same scripture could be for good or evil. Either one could work out like that in someone, not that his truth is accepting evil. So then in the heart, it's like, oh, those are the dogs. I am way more righteous than those filthy, worthless, garbage. In this pride and self-righteousness is like pouring out, and that's the sin of the dogs, because they're from Abraham's seed. That see, flesh doesn't make them better. That's not the real sin. But see, that's mankind. That's who man is. But now it's the spiritual seed of Abraham. The real things. The flesh profits nothing. It doesn't prove someone's a believer or an unbeliever. And if they're from Abraham's literal seed, that doesn't make them better than anyone else in reality concerning truth and heavenly things. But the carnal mind thinks so. And that was the sin of all of Jerusalem, ultimately, that it pounds its chest and doesn't even, it looks up and says, thank Elohim, I'm not like that sinner, out of pride and self-righteousness and better, and condemning the other. Condemning in the heart is something to be done, to work. That's done in the heart, condemnation. Someone says, I didn't condemn someone. It could be true, or he's lying. It could be true or a lie, because that work is in the heart to condemn someone. That's what we have to learn not to do, is do this actual condemning. Messiah didn't do this. He says, I condemn no man, no one. I don't judge anyone. We also read that. Then he starts talking about how he judges. We have to seek the Creator on these things. If we search for it while trusting man's heart, we'll never see. Because, unbelieving man isn't going to want to do good to us. They're not going to want to do good. They don't have the answer anyways. Trusting in man is foolish with the heart. Only trust in the Creator through Messiah. And he will give us the true, real understanding. Who would want what's fake? Who would want anything else? It doesn't make sense to want anything else. And yet, it just shows how bad the heart is to want something else than what the Father gives freely. For those that ask, he will do so. Nothing he can't do. Nothing too hard. But with man, it's impossible. With the Father, nothing is impossible. We read, Messiah teaches. This is true. More carnality has to die, which is what it looks like something. It is something, and it just needs to die more. It doesn't die all at once. It needs to keep dying, die daily, like the apostle said. I die daily. Well, you can't do that literally. So what does it mean? You know, this is the death. Take up your stake and follow him to death, to be dying and then finally die to that old man, nailing the old man to the snake, the serpent, which is who and what everyone is, of self. The snake was lifted up on the rod of Moses. The flesh and what it represents and is and who man is needs to die and be put to the stake. But Messiah, what about Messiah? There's no exception. This is blasphemy to the church world. I know it. Of course, it's blasphemy. Of himself, he's the same. Messiah is the same as everyone else of self. Why do they think he said, of myself I can do nothing? Because we're no good of self. No one is good, not even one. He's not lying. That included himself, except one. And all of a sudden, these simple things we read don't mean what they mean when it means what it means. Like except one means one, not any other. The Father is the only exception. No one is good of himself, not even one. We read that. You know, that's quoted from no one is good, not even one. Messiah teaching it. The apostle teaching it. But this is not to say Messiah wasn't of the Father or something and isn't who we read he is. That's not the point. Just of self, the flesh is no good, needs to die. We are the enemy of the creator of ourselves. It's enmity all the time. Always will be. That's why it has to die. Because it always will be. What a sad state, isn't it? It doesn't change. And the Father won't change it. Who and what we are is always enmity to the end, but it has to die. And the more it dies, the more we live. Because that old enmity and death dies more, we could live more. You know, you do more good and less sin, and understanding more and less lack of understanding. And we have to be perfected at the end, meaning that old man has to perish right at the end. Messiah was perfected. Why don't they teach the truth out there that his people have to be perfected concerning real things, whatever keeping the commandments is meaning in our heart? This has to be done at some point at the end. This is the true end, which isn't to say there's not an end of the age, but that's not what's being spoken of for a believer to understand. Messiah's words, enduring to the end, whatever our end is, shall be saved. If someone did that, they were being saved the whole time to the end, but it's the truth that we have to endure to the end of whatever our tribulation is for anybody in Messiah. That was true 500 years ago, that someone had to learn and endure to the end and overcome sin and death and be perfected at their end. That was their end. That was their seventh trumpet. That's the important thing, whatever we're reading in Revelation for what its meaning, what the spiritual war is, what our end is. These are the things that must come quickly and shortly in a believer's life. They got to happen. under his favor through time, but they have to happen for a believer. There'll be signs that I'm convinced he will show, as he's shown everyone. Messiah is not confused that his end was coming, so it wouldn't be any different for any other true believer and disciple that lived, including the first disciples, the apostle. All of them knew when their end was near, all of them, because it's a given to know when the end is near, when the race is complete, and they all know that they overcame. They would know, it's given to know if that's what happened, that they finished the race. Now they can say they did it, and not a moment sooner, right before the apostle, like right before his death. He can say that now without lying, because he knows now he did it, and he didn't do it of himself, but he did it nevertheless. He made it. He overcame the world as Messiah did, so that we can, and not live in death. And I wonder if the 3.5 years is something to do with a believer's end, all of them, because we do know it's in the pattern and following what Messiah did and becomes. We have to follow and become, just as he did. Follow his footsteps. What is part of that footstep? What seems to be 3.5 years of a lot of tribulation, but at the same time, how much blessing also that the Father's giving, how much sight, clarity, and faith and strength also. And then finally, his end came. And the apostles, like, I'm about to be poured out as a drink offering for a bunch of people's benefit. That's how the Father works. Sacrifice of the wicked is wicked, but the good sacrifice is good. And I'm seeing and learning that's how the Father actually works. The apostles' end was for somebody's benefit, for a few people's benefit. To their end, their benefit, but he's on the way out for the benefit of maybe new believers. That's how the Father can show his love, because these real things happen in the heart. You know, taking on somebody's problems, weight, burdens, and saying, whatever becomes of me, let it be. You know, this is not the false humility, this is the true. But that old serpent masquerades everything and will say the similar words at the right time that mimics the truth, and it's nasty because it has nothing to do with the truth. Never does those words and what it means. It would make someone faint. That needs to be overcome too constantly, because it's so bad. It makes you cringe in frustration of how sick that evil is, and it can't overtake us to do some kind of evil. That requires overcoming now. Just seeing what we have to see requires overcoming to not do evil. How do you forgive someone in the midst of them doing severe evil to you? How do you do that in the heart for real? The world's not doing it, yet his people have to. Father gets us to do it. Watch people justify everything they do, whether they're in court suing each other, or in the church world, or here or there, or on YouTube. Every sin is justified by the many and made an excuse for, which Messiah taught also. Excuses from entering the kingdom and doing the Father's will. Here's the excuses. But though they don't work, though, it needs to be known for a believer, they don't work. It won't be like, oh, okay, you having a good excuse. It's not who the Father is. So that's for our benefit to learn that it doesn't work. Testing another meal, which could be, It's the heart thing. It's the same. Or a car. I got a field to attend to that I just bought. I got, land like we read, and that's what I got going on. That's the important thing. We have to see and know that the many are doing these things, that it's not for the world. They'll make all the excuses that until they're blue in the face. We have to understand that. I got another woman, or not another, but we read Messiah saying, I have a woman I got to attend to, He does mention that. That could be a stumbling block or to take someone away. That's all. It's just that's what it's going to be for many. It could be a woman. It could be land. It could be this. It could be that. The point is it's being made excuse. There's an excuse being made, and I don't got time for it. Yeah, the Father's not stupid. No one can mock him. He makes time. He makes it work when we believe. So then it uses an excuse to try to say, like, it's not possible. But the person cannot actually believe in their own excuse because that's sin. Because in heaven it doesn't stand. They don't believe the very words they're saying. It's an excuse so that they can do whatever they want to do. They don't actually believe the excuse. It's just usury. This is very hard to put into words what's happening in the heart. They will look like they believe the excuse, but they don't actually believe in the excuse because it doesn't stand with the Father. It's a judgment. They'll know somewhere deep inside that's not right. Doesn't matter. It doesn't care then, and it uses that excuse to do whatever sin or whatever it is, whatever it's justifying or excusing. It's just using that to justify this thing over here. Doesn't even believe the excuse itself in its own heart because it's a sin. It doesn't stand. Who can stand? We read in Revelation. Who can stand? Stand. Most people are standing literally. Is that the meaning? No, that's not the meaning. Being upright doesn't prove we're upright. It needs to line up with what upright represents and means. Adam is created upright, but is he upright yet? Spiritually, no. So then it's only good when it's meaning what it represents, the upright picture, and what upright is meaning when it needs to be done inside in the heart. Then it's good, then it's upright. Now it's lining up with the truth and not contradicting it. Spiritually not upright, but literally upright is no good. Just whatever the Father moves someone to do, that's what it is. That's it. That's what doing his will is. They follow the cloud by day and fire by night. They follow the Spirit. But yes, they did, and yet no, they didn't, because that wasn't the reality in Messiah yet for what these things mean. That's why they followed the cloud, because that's something like following him in the Spirit for us. Wherever he says to go and do, that's all, which is huge, which is everything, which is to be seen what that means to follow him in spirit, to walk and, follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They drank that spiritual water, whatever, where what the apostle says, it kind of sounds like maybe Jesus was the God of the Old Testament, which has nothing to do with what he's saying. He's giving the meaning that he sees that really means, that it always meant, and applying that meaning for us. That's for us. Here, this is what they did. This is what this means. They drank from that spiritual, but it wasn't the true spiritual water because it came from a rock, literal water. But that's what it means. That's what the apostle's speaking about. It has nothing to do with Messiah being the creator, God of the Old Testament. Can't find that anywhere in Scripture either. Of course you can't. You won't even find a hint someone so badly wants to see it, they will. Then when we see what their scripture is for proof, we're in disbelief because it's no reality. They're seeing a delusion, an image in their mind that's not actually there, and but how they're claiming it's there, it's not. It's just desperately using any verse that they can to say, oh, this Jesus right there, speaking of Jesus, when it's the Creator and no other. Messiah wasn't even born yet. That which is born of flesh is flesh. That's what's born of spirit is spirit. Rightly divide the two. Messiah is born the natural way through the seed of David, from the seed of offspring of David, concerning being the son of Elohim. This is spirit. Having the Father's spirit is to be a son of the Creator. These both are true. He was born in the flesh according to the flesh, and he's the son of Elohim. Or they try to pick one. And then stay away from all the simple scriptures that are so obvious to me. It's so simple and clear. And they don't see it. They're blinded by the Elohim of this world. That old serpent deceiving, beguiling, like the apostle is giving some meaning for what's happening. A little concerned that you're being beguiled like Eve was back then by the serpent, deceived and beguiled. That's how tricky it is. These things are happening in spirit, though. The temptations, everything. The spiritual war. It's not to exclude physical things. It's just that's not the heavenly meaning. Ever. The heavens are above the earth, way higher above the earth, so therefore they're greater things. They're the higher things, the important things, heavenly things. The real things of the spirit and heart, of which all these sins, like pride, is of a spirit. It's a work. It's an evil work. It's a spiritual wickedness, like we read. Spiritual wickedness in high places, heavenly places, in the heart, higher things. There's wickedness, and then there's good, and then there's good lower, and there's good evil, or good lower things, evil lower things. And yet, I don't know that any in literally, but many things could be done carnally, and it was actually evil in the heart, done sin. That's happening all the time. Could be through even giving. Eve did give to Adam. Does that mean she did good? She didn't do good. She sinned. While she's giving, this is powerful. This applies to like all evil. It's how it works. This is how deception and evil works. You look good while doing evil through giving, looking good, a gift, a bribe. Gift and bribe are like one and the same. You could read it and look up the word, gifts, bribes. Is a sin to bribe someone through a gift, which is a bribe when it's done like that. To get you to believe something, to get you to do something, some kind of bribe is sin. And it blinds the eyes of the righteous. So we have to learn not to accept these. They want you to sin, to blind us. The enemy wants us dead. If you catch it for a bribe and you ask, why did you bribe me? What do you think they'll do? They'll say they didn't do it. What are you talking about? I'm not bribing you. I'm just giving you a gift. Why? Why are you doing this random thing? And then someone goes, I don't know. Liar. That's nonsense. They're blind. I don't know. Father gives us the free gift of life and faith. Why, Father? I don't know. I have no clue. That's what the Father would say. There's no such thing as doing a work with I don't know, meaning that's not a true answer. It's not even possible. Some kind of intention was done. They just won't tell you what it was. And if I don't know is the best answer in the moment, then that's what someone will say to try to hide the truth, the true intention. They can't tell you that. That's what they're hiding all their life. In unbelief and darkness, they can't say that. They slip up, but they won't want to do that on purpose to say it. The Father gets people to slip up where they don't want to do what they did, and they slip up all the time. They can't not slip up because you can't hide anything from the Father at all times. But even before people slip up all the time, say what they weren't supposed to say because they slipped up, because the Father doesn't accept it. Nobody's ever able to keep that secret perfectly. No one's ever done it. They're slipping up all the time, but then everyone says hush hush about it. Acts as if none of this is happening. Covers up his judgment with something else, selling an image. This is why this happened, when it's actually a judgment from above. That's how much it hates the Creator, carnal man. It covers up anything that's good and true, and viciously hates it. Hates the Father and all things true. Desperately wicked to cover up anything good and true. Desperation to do so. That's how much it loves evil. While it believes it's a good person and pretty good, it doesn't see any evil it does. It doesn't do any evil in its own mind. It never sins. It remembers other people's sins for 50 years, the tiniest splinter, but it can't remember a single thing it does. And it can't remember any good that came its way, but it remembers a sinful splinter. 50 years for somebody that did something to them. All those sins that people sin to the person, they remember all of them. And it's weighing them down, and it's filling up with wrath. All those sins that happened while they were a kid and a child and grow up through high school, all of them are remembered and weighing someone down, and it's just already working. It's already true. They don't have to even think about it. It's already there, heavy laden with sin, and it remembers all the evil people did to them. And they also did the same to others. No different. It's everybody. So then when there's a moment, if someone rages and blows up, they lose it because of this being true, because they're just trying to suppress it and hide all the things that people did to them that make them fill up with wrath. And now someone blows up on someone, they lose it because they have zero forgiveness for everything. None of it, zero forgiveness in the heart for real, for all these other things that happen to someone. The Father offers healing and forgiveness of actual sin, which will lead to life for real, which clears out all these heavy laden wicked things inside of us. He wipes them out like a bowl when someone repents with their heart. That doesn't mean we didn't do anything, but we forget it. In a sense, it's being forgotten. He forgets and doesn't remember your sins. It's not Alzheimer's that the Father has, as if he doesn't know. This is an understanding of forgetting the sins because it's forgiven. So they're being forgotten. And when sins are forgiven, it will look like that for us. They're forgotten. They don't bother you like they used to. That's what should happen when sins are forgiven. It's like forgetting that they happened. You let it go. But it's not because someone decided to let it go. That can't be done unless someone repents for actual sin it does. It can't go another way outside of faith and outside of the truth. So someone in worldly wisdom says, forget it and just let go of your past. They're teaching them how to be destroyed because they will always be there. They're a delusion. There's no reality to what they're saying apart from the truth and real repentance and faith in truth and Messiah that The Father forgives sins. If it's some other way apart from the truth, it won't work spiritually, in reality. Can someone see how evil this is now? It becomes pretty evil once we start seeing some things. You're commanding people to be destroyed because they're doing their father's work, the devil, and they think it's good while they do evil. That's how delusional it is. That's how strong the delusion is right now. It always has been and will be to the end. It's not going to get better in this age, not this evil age. Don't we read this is the evil age? Did something change? Did man change? Nothing changed. It's the truth still. It won't be like this forever, but this is the age we're in, evil. There's no way for the Father to do all his works in his people without it being the same as it was 1800 years ago. It's still the same wicked world. There wouldn't be anything to overcome if it was a perfect, good world. All of us, of his truth would apply. All of it would be lies. Every scripture that says something about darkness and this world being darkness would be a lie, which is what the devil wants, the Father to be a liar. How do you do this? Through secrecy and trickery. Try to get to someone to believe that it's getting better and better and it's a good world. Now you just made the Father a liar in all things. That's how quickly it becomes evil. Are they going to acknowledge that? Are they going to see that? No, I'm not saying that. I didn't say those words. It doesn't matter. It's what it's implying and teaching, the doctrine. That's what evil teachings do. They imply and teach things that gets in people's heart. That's the goal of a false prophet, to destroy us, to spiritually destroy someone and get worship and praise, because the enemy knows the only way they can rise up in fame and riches is by destroying more people. The more you destroy, the more you rise in this world. Speaking of spiritual death and destruction, the real things, they do destroy people, keep them destroyed. Through lying doctrines, too, could destroy someone. Because once you believe a lie in the heart, it's a judgment and it's a lie. It's going to work destruction because it's not the truth. It's just how it works. It's going to work death. It's going to break everything else around it and destroy everything around. Everything around it's going to be destroyed when there's one destroyer. It starts destroying everything around it. That's why people that go insane and kill a bunch of people before they end their life, that's what happened literally. But I'm speaking of what's going on in the heart. And it just goes crazy and takes as many people as it can because it's that wrathful of the devil and prideful. It might as well be possessed at that point, full blown. And it needs to take out as many people as it can before it takes its own life, because that's how much it hates creation and everyone and everything. It's a sad, sad, frightening condition, and vile and evil and pathetic and insecure beyond all measure. It's highly insecure, highly hateful and murderous. Someone that does that, I mean, this is the truth. It doesn't change what was done. This happens. And why can't we talk about it and say what's going on in the heart? It's selfish. They can't want, it's dying, so it needs to take everyone else out. Oh, you can't live because I'm dead, so I'm going to kill you. It's so evil, it makes me cringe. It makes the hairs stand up on the head how wicked this is. It's pathetic too. It's so violently pathetic, but the world supports all this. It supports spiritual wickedness. It protects its own. The devil protects sin and evil. Look how often they support rapists, pedophiles. Look how often they hide their stories. And they just keep on being famous somehow. How on earth is that possible? Where even devils are exposing devils and saying how is this possible? It's pretty bad when that's happening. People want a good image. They don't want to be attached to it and worship an image that's not a good looking image. That's why people go insane and go, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my God, I touched LeBron James, oh my God, because they desperately are empty inside and in heavy destruction. Who can know it? But they hide it and don't tell anyone about it. That's why people never look like they're to people that are blind before they take their own life. It seemed like it was normal, seemed like everything was fine, right? Because they were masquerading, because they were trying to hide it the best they can. That's everyone. The crazier the sin, the more darkness inside, the more empty it is. It has to be so. It's a judgment. When you're so screaming for some person that touched you, worshiping them so desperately because it desperately wants its image to be attached to something that the world loves. That's how bad it needs worship, because of how empty it is inside and not getting the true from the Father. Once the Father gives us life and this increases, these things die and they don't need to be done, because we're not going crazy inside needing desperate worship to hide a bunch of sins, insecurity, all this sin. We don't even need it as a benefit. These other things are replacements for the Creator, but they don't work in reality. People just think they do. They're replacements for life, for insecurity, or replacing their death, trying to replace life through these things that cause death still. It doesn't work. 5 billion people can be cheering your name, and it isn't real. And that's why some big time people take their life, because it was never real. They all loved him. Why did he do that? Because they all hated him, and none of them loved that person. And they're experiencing the reality of these words, not what people say. They're experiencing the reality of the truth, of the Father's truth. In reality, they never got love. This is powerful. So it's empty and dead, even though everybody's cheering it on. It's a frightening place to be. I don't know how these people live every day. I don't know how it must be so insane. It's insanely dark, on the edge of suicide every day, probably, for most of all of them. Just so much death and darkness to be in that much sin. There's no way that it can't be so. The more worship you get, the more sin, the more you break the commandments on a deeper level, the stronger the judgment, the stronger the corruption and death. These people are lying through their teeth from their heart that these things are good, that Hollywood's good, that all this is fun and exciting. It's such a massive trick. And everybody in it is in on it, because they're of the devil. They're in on it. They want you to be destroyed with their heart. They want to sell the lie because they're destroyed. They want more money. They can't get enough. They're never satisfied. They're never filled with real life, food from above. Only those that are hungry for righteousness get filled for real, because this is the truth, Messiah's words. Only those hungry for righteousness, not hungry for worship and money and fame. You shall be empty. The opposite is true. You shall be dead and empty. And it gets worse, and it will get worse the more you climb. If the climb was dying, what is their decline from fame? I've wondered that at times. If the climbing in fame is death, what on earth is the decline? And someone else replaces their fame. Ooh, man, that's such a strong death. I can't imagine it. How bad it must be. Because that was their life. and that life was death, and now they're losing their death. This is the death of death. And some people will go crazy. They start becoming desperate to reclaim their fame. Why do we see that? Because the Father's word is true and his judgment's true. They start shaking inside because that is their life, death. And if they lose their only life, which is death, that's death to them. So this death is better than that death. It tries to pick the lesser of two things. Thinks that's the better way, and it's just going to destroy itself more. So strong, the image is so strong. Smile and wave, and it just creates an image that everything's okay. All fake, brushed up, makeup, bodysuits, masks, so much fakery going on. How does someone see the difference between what's real and fake anymore with what these people do? Billions of people that are into it heavily. I mean, they must all at least have a few stars and actors that they really love and worship, that don't even exist because some person plays that role in a mask or something, in a bodysuit, whatever they do, and that person doesn't even exist. And they worship the thing that doesn't even exist. Well, it's already evil to worship a real person and sin and delusion, but how much worse is it to have worship some actor or whatever, and then they're just a character in disguise, and they just create a name and an age that mimics the person playing them, and then you will see they have the same age, the same initials, they're born in the same location, they have the same interest. It's a little weird that all those things are the same, and how many of them are this and how many of them are real, who knows? Why would we want to even try to find out? Just know that something like this exists. It's like the image of the beast being manifested physically. It's like the devil's works being a different name, a new name in the devil, the alter ego, instead of the new name for the new creation, the new man, and receiving a new name representing good and new things. Well, the devil has his version of it. New name is through deception and lying and trickery of this alter person and ego that it slips into whenever it feels like, and just acts, and his life is a delusion. Nothing's real. Wow. Nothing's real ever with these people. It's all fake. All the love and worship is not real. Meaning, in contrast to receiving good things, it's not real. They're worshiping their image, what they think that is, and the stardom and all this stuff. That's what's being worshipped. And it desperately wants its face on the camera because it loves itself that much. It's sick. It worships itself, its own image. Camera pops up and everyone goes insane. Opens their mouth wide open every time. So many people doing it. Why? Why? They don't even know why. They have to be told why they do it. A baby doesn't know, and it's not even born. Darkness has to be told why they do what they do and to repent. Unless they want death, do they love death? Man makes a covenant with death, with the grave, Sheol. Why do you make a covenant with death? We read. This is the true death that we read of. They're not going to say they do that for what the reasons I'm speaking about. Never. It's going to be something good, justifying the evil and getting angry and murdering you for speaking truth, because it cannot acknowledge its real sin that we're speaking about. It's not possible, not even possible. We just have hopes that someone believes, that repents, that mercy shown on them. We know they can't do anything of themselves. You speak to a dead man in hopes that they believe. We don't put expectations and heavy yokes and bondage on people. This can only be done through the truth and understanding from the Father above. Can't be done any other way. Any other way is literal condemnation constantly and heavy yokes and bondage put on people. One truth lines up with another. Because man can't do anything of himself, we don't need to put expectations on him, because we know he can't do it. We don't expect it. That's the perfect thing. That's what we need to do. So why do anything anyways? There's that question that reveals the heart's intention. So they only did something in hopes for gain. Thanks for proving our point and this powerful truth. They accidentally prove our point all the time too, because they couldn't foresee one spiritual step or thing. Couldn't see one step ahead. People the enemies often prove what we're saying with their own words. They don't even realize it. That's how bad the delusion is. How bad does it have to get for it to manifest at the end? The anti-Messiah returned. How bad would it have to be to actually believe that? The anti-Messiah spirit always working, the mystery of lawlessness working, always true in that it exists. The same spiritual wickedness that's always been working, but it's working towards an end. It's wanting to do something and manifest, unleash the beast, unleash the ultra beast. A little bit of restraint restrains from what it really wants to do in its fullness. When that restraint is let go, it will go and do what a beast does, and it will fulfill what it wants to do up to a certain point, and then that's enough. That's it. No more. It's really a world shaping up for that end. I mean, I can see it. It's literally going in that direction pretty fast. And always has been. And there's been types of the end. Types, Hitler is a type. Herod is a type of what they want to do, which is kill everyone and seek out the believers and kill them all. That's what they want to do. And kill anybody that doesn't do what they say and demand them to worship what they worship. Kill all the 2-year-old and under just to get to Messiah, a baby. That's how desperately wicked it is. It's like, just in case this prophecy is true, let's go kill them all. What a twisted thing, strange work. They talk about this in the dark, secret meetings. Let's go kill the 2-year-old. All of that stuff is happening in the dark. Can't be out in the open. They can't tell everyone, their city, their government, their people, that they can't tell them what they want to do ever. They just do what they do and then create an image to hide what they're really doing, so that they buy the image, the people, the many, and not see the truth, but the image that someone wants you to believe. That's all. It's so deceiving that someone could be talking about the Matrix and they're in a delusion because they don't know the Father. They're not learning what real sin is, what pride is, what anything is. And they're saying some right words and in a delusion themselves concerning real things and sin and who and what man is, that everyone is doing the same thing. Nobody wants to deny themselves of self, which is the only way to life. We know how the Father works by his mercy. But if someone is even getting a thought to do what's right, and then by all means do what's right. Because what if you don't? That might be your last thought on it the rest of your life. And he has mercy on whom he has mercy, compassion on whom he has compassion now. This is the only truth for this age. Mercy on all is not coming in this age. Shouldn't expect it, shouldn't demand it, shouldn't require it, shouldn't put heavy yokes and burden on people, church world, harlot. Rightly dividing ages to come and what the Creator's plan will do for the mercy of all. But because they read one thing, they say, nope, nope, nope. And then they could read the other, but then they just deny it and say it's not true. They read both, but both are true, but they only stand for their thing, their doctrine. There's no hope beyond this. Like, that's their thing. They can read it. How smart is a theologian? How schooled are they? Don't believe their trickery, because their words create images that they're wise only to hide that they know nothing. They're not wise. Somebody saying that all doesn't mean all because they can't stand the mercy of all to be shown in the ages to come, where all are sinners. And then we also read he'll have mercy on all, just the same as the previous all in the same breath. Then they decide one is false and not true at all. Why? Because they're wise, because of their doctrines and degrees? No, because they're biased and blind. They're blind. They're being judged. That's why they can't believe it, because they don't want to believe the truth. They only want to support the lie. It's not very wise at all. That's stupid to not believe what a 7-year-old could understand. And that's just only to bring out that there are simple scriptures that are simple, and they reject them. The simplest of scriptures, that he's the Savior of all people, especially of believers. And any truth, even remotely, that's going against their doctrine, anything, then they just reject it and say it's not true. No, it's not true, not true. I don't believe that. That's not what it means. Tell us what it means. And they never do. After what they said got exposed, now tell us what it means after what you said originally is exposed. So what's it mean now? Because we exposed and used scripture properly and proved it to be a lie and contradiction. Now what does it mean now after you got exposed? There's no answer. They don't want it to be true. That's the truth. That's a corrupt heart. They don't want the good news to be true. There's already partiality and bias in the heart, which is sin. You have two things and they won't even look at the other thing, won't even look at it fairly. That's being partial. That's real sin right there. That's a sinner to not ever do that, not look at it, at least without partiality. Just as equally as you're looking at this thing over here that they claim, you have to look at it just as equally with that thing over there. They don't want to do that because they're afraid if they do, it might be the truth. The devil's afraid of something being true, doesn't want it to be true, the truth. And it all comes together when the Father gives the truth to someone and they know it, and it sets them, setting us free. Only the truth sets free, not a lie, not sin. Good news from the Creator means good. How could it mean anything else? That's not man's definition of good. This is the Father saying good news through his word, which is from him. This means good, and no bad news, zero bad news. This is good news. Bad news is that there's many that don't want to believe it because they have to be exposed for this good news as sinners. It requires being exposed. This good news. Light shines on someone, they're exposed. The abomination has to die and receive a deadly wound to the beast. The old man has to take a blow. They start dying now, but they revive it. They save people by reviving the beast, where people started getting close to true belief, started going in that direction, and they kill them, which is to save them, and they die spiritually in the church world and have no power, no sight. So the false prophet just abuses and uses them to do whatever he wants with them, to most of them. Say whatever he wants, and they become whatever he is saying. They sort of become like him spiritually, like the same kind of form. There's good and there's evil for this. There's nothing wrong with becoming what we need to become, even if that's like somebody else, because how the apostle says it, if he's, which he is, imitating Messiah for real, then it's good to imitate the apostle because he's imitating Messiah. But then there's the bad, evil way with this imitation. You become like the evil thing and imitate it, the similar thing. Who's not imitating Messiah? The false prophet, not imitating Messiah. So there's the good and evil, as always, the two things. Two different things need to be rightly divided, seen for each one. And it hit me with the last video with some words that just came alive, some more that I didn't see in the same way. Messiah's words. If you look at a couple different translations, sometimes it helps, but a teacher of the law in the kingdom of heaven, or a scribe, discipled, who becomes discipled for the kingdom of heaven, and it's connected to the law. Yes, it is the spiritual law. Whoever teaches to keep these things shall be called great. Whoever teaches to break the least of these things are called least. Bring out the importance of every word and commandment that didn't go away, but means something that we have to learn. Not to teach to break the least of the things. For the kingdom of heaven. Every time we have kingdom of heaven, this is not about old covenant and what under the law is. This is kingdom of heaven, belief in Messiah and things for the kingdom now. Messiah didn't teach for anything else. He only taught the kingdom of heaven, not the old before and what that meant, carnality. Kingdom of heaven, spiritual things, heavenly things for the kingdom now. All his teachings are, not to say there's not things said elsewhere about other things, but all his teachings are for the kingdom of heaven. People just toss Messiah's words out like dung. They try to cling to Paul or something, and then they use something that could be good, his word, and use it for evil because to do away with Messiah's word so that they never have anything to do with them. But then it's just a lie to think that they obey the apostles' words and not Messiah's. No, they don't. They're just as partial and biased with the apostles' words as anything else. I mean, how many times do we read the apostle speaking of being perfected and what sin is, and that nobody can enter the kingdom if they're doing these things. These things are all said. They think he's some kind of loose person that's just going out sinning everywhere and teaching to sin. He's doing the exact opposite. Especially people who say that he's false. They should check themselves in a mirror. He's speaking about things they don't understand, about keeping the spiritual law, the law of the Spirit, to keep the commandments, speaking of things they don't understand. Therefore, he's lawless now because they're lawless in reality. Don't you teach the law, and yet none of you keeps it? Messiah said he's not speaking out of Moses. He's only speaking out of truth, heavenly things for us. He's talking about the law in the heart. None of you keeps it, he said. He's not speaking carnally, the lower thing and meaning of the law. He's not speaking of literal murder, but the heavenly thing. Always. Unless it's rightly discerned or divided, or I am speaking of something lower and you make it out on purpose to say you are. Otherwise, he's always speaking of heavenly things, highest things, spiritual things. All these things come from the heart. Pride, adultery, murders, thefts, envies, fornication, stealing, theft, same thing. We read quite a few different things. These all come from the heart, and they defile a man, a person. Causes death for real. What goes in the stomach and comes out does not defile a person. It can't do that by itself. And I could just see the simple truth in this. And the church world says right words sometimes. Not everything they say is a lie with words. That has to be seen too. Because if they're saying something that's true, we don't say it's false because they said the right words, the truth. But do they understand it and live by it? And if it's flesh, it's no benefit by itself and can't prove anything, because Messiah said the flesh profits nothing. He's like to his people like they were back then to Moses. Because Moses was made the mediator and the leader by the Creator with authority. And to deny Moses is to deny the Creator, because those commandments come from him. Now to deny Messiah in heaven and his words that came from the Father with authority for the kingdom of heaven is to deny the Father and to be a liar that say they love him but don't keep his commands. Messiah has a lot of commands for his people to learn and do, just as Moses did, but for our heart. Carnal things, there's some change. Someone will say that means what the Father changes. That's faulty. We already know from the beginning it was fine to eat anything. Then it wasn't fine for his people, literally. Now it went back to the beginning. Here we already have proof that the Father did this change. Carnal change, if you will. Not changing spiritually anything. Who he is and what sin is never changes, but carnally. He already did it. So to use that to try to prove something's false because he already did it, give them that example then when they try to say that you can't do that, you're saying the Father changes. He already did. Through an understanding, he already did that. Why was it okay to give a certificate for divorce, but it was not so in the beginning, Messiah said, with Adam and Eve, teaching the authority of the beginning being the truth between one man and woman. Why did the Father do that? He already did it. They're not wanting to go there to truth because it's covering up some kind of sin. They don't want to go there. In the light. Don't want to go out in the light. The Father never changes. This is true. Who he is never changes. What all the commandments mean in the heart never changes. He never changed that. But other things did change, like animal sacrifice. It wasn't so in the beginning for sin. Where is it? There was no animal sacrifice for sin in the beginning. Then there was for his people, and now we went back to the beginning. He already did it. There's these changes. But literal animals don't have anything to do with sin in the heart. He doesn't change. And yet there's these changes that they can all read in Hebrews, which requires by necessity change. They could read that in Hebrews. The apostles talking about some of these changes that I'm trying to give examples of. It has nothing to do with the Father changing himself. Each thing having a purpose in its own time. Even the things that went back to the beginning, what we read, they have a purpose for us to learn still, nevertheless. Something about the kingdom, how sacrifice works for sin. It's a bloody mess. Life is required. Them constantly needing to do that shows that they never understood what real sin was, and they never were forgiven of real sin, but only carnally. And that's why we read that their conscience, the blood of animals could never cleanse the actual conscience. We read that. It's powerful. It never did the real thing. Never did the real thing, ever. But just a type of the true. Spare you from literal death or some kind of judgment, forgiveness. Those that are not entering his rest, they are dead, because we read, stone them to death that break the Sabbath. Those that are not entering his spiritual rest, they're in death for real. Speaking of the spiritual things for the kingdom of heaven. Certain sins are bigger than others. We have to learn that. Certain sins have this death to it that's a little different than other sins that cause death. We read this in John or somewhere. And if we don't get the understanding, it'll be nothingness, confusion. Because if we see certain works, there's a discernment where if we see them, you don't have to pray for them because it is death. That's how serious it is. Which makes it sound like what? We're doing evil, even though they could read that. I don't say you have to pray for them. You could, but I don't say you have to, because it's a serious death, some kind of serious sin and judgment. When it's that serious, there's like a discernment. This is not good. Which we just have to learn, more and more what that means. And why does the apostle speak as if the words in Scripture are true? And Messiah and everyone, the disciples, quoting from it as if it's true today. Quoting from Scripture and saying they died without mercy for doing it on purpose with intention. Why is that being quoted as truth long after Messiah's resurrection and a warning for believers of this fearful judgment to look forward to then. That's all that's left if someone's doing this or that or this or that. Because those scriptures are true, the meaning has to be given. Sounds cold, brutal. Yeah, that's what it sounds like to the natural man. But those that are under his favor, the good thing is, if that's true, that's why we read if a lot too, with the apostle too. If this, then it applies for only those that believe. The Spirit is always willing to do good, and under his favor, we would have that belief and hope that a believer doesn't do some rank sin with actual intention, because the Spirit is always willing to do good. It's no longer I who sin, but, that's why we read that. It's no longer I who sin, but sin that dwells in the flesh in me. See, someone uses that to sin for a license to sin. It's a fine line. Because under his favor, the old man's sins are not counted for intention, for a death like that. And yet we still have to understand this and fear these things because they're true. Can't mock him. It's not an excuse. The apostle's speaking how it works. He's not saying it out of an excuse, just that it's true. If someone believes. And if someone doesn't, it's just a matter of time before their folly is poured out. Even now, their folly will be poured out and be revealed that they're not a believer. We need to know that. Because if you become one with someone that's not a believer, they're going to their only intention is going to be to destroy you. They know not what they do. They're going to do that and never acknowledge they do that. That's how deceptive it is. We only look at the works. What did the works say? Not what people say, what the works say. Because that's the truth. Messiah said, you know them by their works, their fruits. That's it. That's how you will know them, whether they're a believer or not, for their works. Works of the heart. It is amazing. Even with Moses on the mountain, it's amazing to me. Those words are true today. They have been since the kingdom of heaven being at hand in the beginning. They've been true for everyone that believes. Every generation that's happening, it's true. What it means is true. There's a delay and people start sinning. And Moses is dead to them. This happens every generation with Messiah. This is the truth. It's happening in spirit. They go and join the church world then. Hasty, not wanting to obey, not wanting to do his will. Where is he? He's dead to us. They don't want to do what's right. They want to see the kingdom come carnally. So they join carnality. And they get what they want, which is death. Through the works proving they want death, they're obviously deceived. Confusion. Father shows us his power and how his word is true by these things being true for so many, in unbelief. Moses comes down and he finds the people doing something. Messiah is literally teaching that. The first watch, the second watch, the third, fourth watch and pray. Something about him coming, visiting, which is like a judgment, When? Now. In spirit. Just like Moses came, gets angry at the people because of their sin. It's like going up the mountain represents something, but it's not the true, because it's still connected to the earth. Messiah in heaven is what this represented and means. And eventually Moses comes down from the mountain. Will he find faith? Does he find faith every generation? I believe we have that question asked. Will I find faith on the earth? Did Moses? What's the answer? Did Moses? So few, very little. Basically, no, because of how few. That's the answer. It's been true every generation till the end. Why on earth would Messiah speak of a old covenant age when he is the resurrection, when he is the first fruit, when he is teaching the kingdom of heaven first? He's speaking about all these things forward, not the old. He'll be with his people till the end of this age, the age that he spoke of, the same age that we're in. Can they prove this wrong? They can't prove this wrong. Sly snakes that say that we're in a different age other than what Messiah said. Prove it wrong. Prove we're not in the same age. They can't do it. The age of the new covenant, starting with Messiah's blood being shed and his resurrection. How could someone say it started way later and not at that time? How? When there are already believers filled with the Spirit proving it. Didn't come 40 years later. That was a judgment on Jerusalem that came. New covenant was already for those that believe already. Jerusalem still stood for a while, literally. There's an understanding, like a mixing sort of, till it finally was judged and moved out of the way. That doesn't mean that new covenant didn't start when it started with Messiah. Where does it say that it would start 40 years later? This is the blood of the new covenant. Messiah said so. Why would it start any other time than when he's resurrected and the Spirit's poured out? Why would it be any later? To say that this age ended already and we're in the age to come is to say that he's only with a few people, a few disciples in the very first few years, and that's it. He's with his disciples even to the end of the age, which ended long ago, and now what? He's not with his people till the end? It's not who the Creator is. It's not who Messiah is now. That he's been, because the Messiah, to see Messiah is to see the Father, because he has the Father's Spirit. To say he's with his people to the end of the age includes all those that would ever believe. That's the truth. It's like to say like another way of saying I'm utterly with you by saying end of the age. It includes everyone to the end of the age, because that is the end. And the end of the age is not before people. So it includes everyone, all the 144,000, the first fruits. Obviously, representing those that believe in Messiah that ever lived. They can go reread that and see that that's what makes sense, that it's not just for some last generation. That's not what's being spoken of. It includes them, but it's for everyone that ever believed. And it wouldn't shock me if that's actually the number for the whole age, but I don't know that for sure. It just wouldn't shock me. Being that many are called and few are chosen, and there's always been so few. And his word teaches that all over. Messiah teaches that. Go out and invite them. Go out here, go out there, and then he comes back and says, I did. Go out a second time, and he says, I did. Okay, go out a third time, because all those people you invited, none of them shall taste my supper. None. Go out again. Eventually you'll get one. That's how few it is. That's what Messiah is teaching. I don't know any number. That's not the important thing, just that there's few. It's not our teaching and words we made up. And he's also not teaching that there's none. It's just showing how that's so few. Go out again. All those people you invited, none of them shall taste my supper. You know, it's showing how few it is. And what's it connected to? The things to come, too. Can't be disconnected. The good news to come. Tell people about it. The mystery of the kingdom that the harlot doesn't know. It's a mystery. Do they believe it in their heart? They don't believe the truth in their heart. They have to come out of there. Come out of her, my people, the harlot. That's the her. That's where his people come out of, specifically the harlot. And the harlot is one with the beast, the world. They have the same heart. I mean, there's no difference in the heart. It's just a different image of religion versus unreligious. But they're spiritually the same, because the harlot touches the beast, rides it. They're one in the flesh, carnal, one in carnality. These two become one. And it's not, you know, a beast like bucks the harlot off. It's not, they don't like each other. I came across this crazy ad that I've never seen before on YouTube that randomly popped up. And I was in disbelief, as I have been on different things lately. Utter disbelief. So random. And that's what they're pumping out to the world. Some cartoon woman, and there's like a wolf beast. And it's just telling you openly what this beast wants to do to her. In an ad that obviously who knows how many people end up seeing on YouTube for all to see and hear. Just telling you openly what it wants to do. And it gets closer and closer, and it becomes like a drama. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it. It's been doing this for decades. It's taking what rank sin is and systematically being more open with it, so that eventually you might find someone on the side of the road humping an animal. You know, it wouldn't surprise me. It's just taking on sin to utter extreme and being proud of it. If this isn't Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know what is. Spiritually Sodom and Gomorrah. A wicked, evil generation that might just be the worst that there ever was, because of the technology and what it can do and how people could use it and do. It's astonishing. Basically got porn for an ad on YouTube out in the open, where, not to call it good, but you know, not too long ago some of these things were kind of hidden. You know, you do this in the dark, and now it's so bad that it's doing it in the open. That just shows how bad the image is. They're losing their image. The sin is getting so bad they're losing their image. The church world's getting more destroyed. literal sin's like taking over it more. I mean, it's like the Father's just putting to shame the harlot. And it's going to get worse and worse for her. As the days go by, her shame's going to be poured out even more. There won't be any protection for her. He doesn't protect sin. It's getting real bad. The Beauty and the Beast. You know, where do those cartoons really come from? Some kind of mockery of the truth, a little bit of truth in plain sight. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Peace, take care, seek truth from above.